Hi guys, my name is Tiffany and welcome back to another video. So in this last episode of how to land that new grad job, I just wanted to share with you guys my interview tips.
'Cause anywhere with you feels right. Anywhere with you feels like Paris in the rain. Paris in the rain. When I'm with you, when I'm with you, Paris in the rain. Paris in the rain.
So I have already done a video on some interview tips, so make sure to check it out in one of the cards above. But in this one, I'm going to share you a little bit more on some interview tips that I have on ways you can be successful during your interview. So I know interviews are a pretty challenging part of the process, and it's really something that you do need to prep for in advance. So I know some people have the ability to wing it and things like that, but honestly, I'm not one of those people. And so I just wanted to share with you guys some of my tips I have in order for you guys to prep for your interviews. So the most important thing for me, at least, is to be able to have my answers kind of already mapped out for me. So I do like to prep in advance, whether it's having a Google spreadsheet or a Word document or whatever, and kind of going through very common interview questions that you're going to be asked. So in my other interview tips video, I shared a lot of interview questions that I was asked in multiple interviews, and there is a common theme that they usually go for. And so of course, very common ones include tell me about yourself, why you want to work for this hospital, all these types of questions that are super common that you're going to be hearing in your interviews. And so it's nice for you to really prep for them in advance, and that way you know exactly what to say and you don't start rambling on and on in your interviews. So I like to have a Google spreadsheet and have a brief answer for all the common questions that I'll be asked in an interview. And it's super important when you start doing the prep work and answering your questions to kind of come up with ways to really make use of your time. So for each question that I have in my interviews, I try to keep it in 3 to 5 minutes or less, just because really in interviews, you don't have a lot of time. Usually an average interview is about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, but really it's a very short amount of time for you to really explain to your interviewer all about you and what you can bring to the table. So don't try to waste your time by going on and on and on and not doing the prep work to answer the questions where you start rambling and you're wasting your time. If you do the prep work in advance, then you are able to save a lot of time and you really can enhance all the things you want to say and have it all prepared for you. So I say to keep your answers to a 3 to 5 minute minimum, and even time yourself when you're doing your preparation work and have a timer, or even discuss it with someone too, and talk out your answers with another person really also helps to give you the practice that you need. And it's also able to give you a period of how long you're answering your questions for. Because like I said, this is usually a very brief time for you to really enhance about yourself. So you don't want to spend too much time on one question and not being able to continue on to the next. So keep your answers to a minimum. And also the next thing too is while you're answering your questions, always make sure to remember that this is a professional interview. You're not here to talk to your friend as if this was a story time. Of course, you want to make it very comfortable and that you feel at ease with your interviewer, and you want to not be so rigid and stiff with your responses that it looks and sounds as if you practiced them, because even though you did, we're trying not to sound that way, right? But you also do want to make sure to remember that this isn't a conversation that you have with your friend or your family member or something like that. This is a professional interview. So keep it to a minimum where you're not oversharing the story. So for example, if someone asks you, can you tell me about an experience on blank, blank, blank? And you're sharing with your interviewer the story, but then you start going into details about the patient and what the patient was wearing and what you were doing and what other people around you were doing and how this person was reacting to you and whatever, and just going on about minor details that are not important. And of course, it's great to be able to visualize a picture in the interviewer's head about what was going on in that situation, but that is not what's relevant. So I want you guys to remember these 3 things when you're answering questions about clinical scenarios or situations where your interviewer is asking you to tell them about a specific time when something happened, all right? So you have your introduction on the situation, and then the problem and what happened and what occurred during that time. And lastly, the solution. So there always needs to be a solution at the end. What did you do to resolve the situation? So there's 3 points to it all. So like any story that you tell, it's the introduction, the problem, and then the solution. But try to keep it within 3 to 5 minutes, like I said, and just get straight to the point. This is the situation, this is what happened, and this is what I did to resolve it. And that's it. I don't want any more details about what the patient was currently wearing during that time, or that the patient was crying hysterically and going on telling them about the story when their dog ran away from home, or whatever. Nothing that is irrelevant to the situation currently, do not mention. Okay, so this, like I said, is not a time for you to share all these stories and go into minute details that wasn't important. Just get straight to the point. Intro, problem, solution. All right, and so that's what you want to do when you're answering these questions about certain situations or time when something happened. And I also want you guys to remember to make this about you. An interview is all about you, and even though there are going to be other people and other external factors that play into situations, like for example, in nursing school, you're always going to be with your preceptor, or if you're always going to be overseen by another person. Great, we all understand that. And when a lot of these interviewers, when you're applying as a new grad, they know your limitations and they know what you can do as a nursing student, right? And so really what's important is to enhance about yourself. So don't talk about, oh, your preceptor doing all of these things and you got to just observe. Like, that is not the key point. The key point is that we want to see what you did and what you contributed during that situation. So yes, even though you're going to be overseen a lot by a lot of people, and even not just in your clinical workplace, but even in other places that you do, like for example, through your volunteering, or whether you're working at somewhere else and you're going to be overseen by a supervisor, manager, or whatever, that the whole point of this interview is to enhance what you're good at and what you can bring to the table and what you've done during certain situations or scenarios or whatever happened, right? So we want to make sure to enhance what you have done and contributed to, not what your preceptor has done, not what your supervisor has done. It's all about you. And remember, in all the resume, cover letters, and interview tips videos that I've done before, it's very important to always remember to include keywords. I cannot enhance this more than enough in all my videos, but keywords is so important. And really, there's a lot of keywords that people are looking for. And I also do mentoring sessions where I do one-to-one interviews and resume building with other people and cover letters. And there is a key pattern that we do look for. And a lot of times what we're looking for is leadership, communication, ability to work well with other people, critical thinking skills, time management. And if you are able to use these keywords and gain experiences to share these keywords, that is what's super important. And it's always nice to be able to have an experience that connects back to the skills. So make sure to check out my previous video where I talked about cover letters. And in that, I do talk about how it's super important to always have a skill with an experience. And a lot of people always forget to do this, where in their cover letters, resumes, or especially in their interviews, they can say, I am great at critically thinking, or I am great at time management. But they never share an experience on when or how they were able to gain this experience. So it's so important for you to use the skill and the keyword and connect that with an experience. So for example, my keyword / skill is going to be time management. And this experience that I have, for example, is in med-surg. I was able to take care of 3 patients on my own without my preceptor's help. And that I was able to time manage appropriately and provide the appropriate care for all my 3 patients by being able to provide a timeline for myself, and also being able to tell my patients when I'm going to be doing certain parts of their care and what time I will do that, and give them a time frame as well. So that shows my interviewer that I do have the ability to time manage, which is my keyword / skill, and I also have the experience to connect with that. So always make sure that when you're doing your interviews that there needs to be something that you have, the skill and the experience to connect with that skill. Because you don't want to say, I have the ability to do this, this, and this, but not share the experience or skill where you received that or where you got that from. So make sure to do that in your interviews. Another key important thing to remember is that don't assume that your interviewer knows you. So a lot of people will assume that their interviewer has went through their resume and cover letter and remembered everything about them. So they're going to probably talk about something that they assume their interviewer probably saw in their cover letter resume. But always remember this, that sometimes a lot of interviewers don't even have the time to read cover letters or resumes, that usually hiring managers will go through that and read all those things, and that they will decide the certain candidates, and then they show up to the interviewer. And so a lot of times interviewers don't even know who they're really interviewing, and they just assume that this is a candidate that has been chosen for their unit. And so I want you guys to really remember this, that just pretend as if they have not seen your cover letter and resume, and really remind them on things that you have done. So whether they did read it or not, they're not going to remember every single detail about you. So really make sure to share all these experiences from where you got it from. So let's say during your clinical experiences, you want to share a story. You can tell them where you got this experience from, and not assume that they know that you did your ED rotation at St. Mary's Hospital or whatever. You can share that again in your interview, and that way they know where you got this experience from. So it's just a reminder for you guys to remember that a lot of times interviewers have tons of people they have to interview to, and they're not going to remember who you are and everything you listed on your resume or cover letter. So really make sure to remind them and share the experiences that you put on your resume, cover letter again, and bring it up again. So another tip that I have for you guys is to always remember your limitations. So even as a nursing student, you should know your roles and what you can and can't do. And whether you're a nursing assistant or you're working under the direct supervision of somebody else, always remember your chain of command. So it's super important to verbalize that too as well in your interviews, your chain of command. So for example, if you are the nursing student and you are doing some sort of procedure or whatever, or you're escalating a situation, always remember to verbalize your chain of command. So let's say the question is asking you something about when was the time you had to advocate for a patient. And let's say you were with your preceptor. So usually as a nursing student, your chain of command is usually always connecting with the preceptor first, or your nurse or whoever you're following, discussing your concern with that person first, just because they are the ones that are directly overseeing you. And then also you can bring it up to your clinical instructor as well, since they're usually the two people that are going to be overseeing you, and then escalating it further. And usually the next step would be to escalate it to like a charge nurse or a resource nurse or whoever is overlooking the unit, and then bringing it up to like your providers, whether it's your nurse practitioner or your doctor or whatever. So that's usually a chain of command, and that's usually something that I recommend that you verbalize, that you know your limitations and what you can and can't do, and it's something to enhance in your interviews, that you do know the steps and roles that you have, whether you are a nursing student or whether you are an actual nurse, and you know your roles and your limitations. So it's important to make sure to verbalize those things. And lastly, it's always so important to remember to share what you can contribute to the table. What interviewers are going to want to see is how are you going to contribute to their hospital, because they want to make sure that they're hiring someone that's going to be able to bring back to the unit. And so you can share with them on ways that you're going to do so, whether you do have experience or not. So if you are an experienced nurse, what are some things that you're currently doing on your unit that you want to bring to this hospital? Or if you are a new grad nurse, what are some things that you want to bring to table? So anything that you're passionate about that you want to be able to contribute. So for example, for me, I love mentoring and I love teaching. And so those are two of my passions that I always want to make sure that I can bring to whatever hospital that I'm going to be working at. So in my interview, I will always mention how I am passionate about mentoring, and always asking whether or not this hospital provides any sort of mentoring resource for their staff, just because that's something that I am passionate about. And I do love teaching as well, and I do want to be able to contribute to that as well. So I'll always make sure to mention that in my interviews, and always ask my interviewers on ways I can be involved when it comes to teaching. Do they have skills lab that I can do, or be a part of any sort of education? That's something that I'm passionate about, like I said, so I want to be able to contribute and share that to the unit as well. So always make sure to share what you can bring and contribute to the hospital, whatever you're passionate about, and something that you want to be able to do and bring back to hospital. Always make sure to share that. So hopefully this video is helpful for you guys, and good luck for those out there who are going to be doing interviews. So make sure to check out this 3-episode series on how to land that new grad job, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.
'Cause anywhere with you feels right. Anywhere with you feels like Paris in the rain. Paris in the